What the fuck? What in the actual living Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Firstly, hello readers, and firstly, I'm terribly sorry that this is taking the place of my usual video, but I've got to get this off my chest. Firstly, let's start at the beginning, shall we? Let's start with the facts. So, on the 23rd of June 2016, the UK decided to vote itself out of the European Union by a popular referendum vote. Now, as you may have noticed, I'm from the UK. And although I don't live in the UK anymore, I now live in Japan. I've been living in Japan since 2010. Now, being in Japan, the overnight tally in the UK was actually throughout Friday lunchtime when I was in Japan. So I could actually sit down and watch in abject horror as the votes tallied up and the leave stretched ahead with basically every single constituency with a few exceptions. 48% remain in the EU and 52% to leave the EU, with exceptions being in London, Scotland and Northern Ireland and a smattering of the larger cities in the UK. I felt numb. I mean, I'm shaking as I say this. Every time a constituency that voted leave came up on the screen, I felt sick. I'm surprised how it actually kind of felt personal to me as well. I don't know why I felt like that at the time, but after taking most of this weekend to unpackage what had happened in my native home country and organise my thoughts, I think I've landed on the reason why it feels like a personal affront, and I'll get to that. But why? Why have people voted us out of the European Union? Let's look over each issue one by one, shall we? Let's look at things like the economy, immigration, sovereignty, and things like that. Let's start with the one that's the easiest to solve, the economy. So, a lot of people are probably already aware of the fact that being a member of the European Union means that we need to basically pay, for layman's terms, a subscription service, yeah? Now, firstly, let's just get some of the nonsense bullshit out the way. That there was a pretty famous campaign buzz going around at the time stating that we pay some 350 million a week to the EU. That's bullshit. That's absolute freaking bullshit, because that's what we would normally be paying. Yeah? The thing is, back in the 80s, actually Margaret Thatcher did something good for the UK. She actually negotiated a sweet deal for the UK where we get a rebate, right? Now, it's not even a rebate, strictly speaking, where we pay the correct amount and then the EU pays back X amount. No, we basically pay a discount subscription service to the EU. So rather than paying about 55 million a day, we pay about 35 million a day because of the rebate. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh yeah, 35 million is still a big number. Well, we're talking on national terms here. It's a big number to me and you, yes, but this is on national terms. We are talking about economies that deal in the billions and the billions of billions. 35 million, while certainly not a small amount, is smaller than the lies. Now, I did a bit of number crunching on this. Now, so we give about 15 billion to the EU every year. Now, what does the EU give back to us? Now, public and private spending of the EU back to the UK is about 6 billion. So, all in all, we're giving Brussels about 6 billion a year, right? However, that 6 billion a year gives us all the Euro-wide benefits, right? So, we've got access to the single market, we've got unfettered access to EU countries for business and leisure, and also all of the unnecessary needs for visas and tariffs, things like that. Now, if you're still thinking that £6 billion is a lot, consider the fact that per head, the UK is only the 8th biggest contributor to the EU, despite being the second biggest economy in Europe behind Germany. I mean, fuck's sake, the Netherlands sends more per head. They spend 4 times as much as us on the EU. 4 times! Now, okay, so let's say, we voted to leave. I mean, it's worth bearing in mind that this referendum is not binding. This isn't a final decision. This is just simply in a glorified poll where we've just basically said, okay, the public wants to say we want to leave. But let's say, okay, we do leave the EU, right? And we get all that money back. Yeah, we get that plus 6 billion a year, that net gain. And you might think, oh yeah, an extra 6 billion back in the UK, great. Do you seriously, honestly, hands on heart, think that that 6 billion is going to go to the right places it should do? Do you think it's going to go to the poorest areas of the UK where it requires development? Do you think it's going to go to our agricultural industries, grassroots, creative industries, things like that? We all, how can I put this? We've all been through our favourite hobby of distrusting MPs. Why do we all of a sudden trust them to now handle this extra money in the way we want? And quite frankly, so much money that we're going to regain from being an independent country is going to be focused on disentangling the UK from the EU. It's going to take years. Years. So many of our laws and so many of our regulations in the UK, things like environmental regulations and just basic laws of the land, are based around EU regulations. We're going to have to draw up our own regulations and laws. We can't just simply copy and paste. It's going to take years. And by the time that's all done, and of course that's going to take money, the UK's economy would have seriously contracted by that point, because we've spent so much time and so much money focusing inwards on ourselves to get our house in order. So by the time we can actually say we've got out the other end and we've disentangled ourselves from the EU, the economy would have contracted, right? And that funding isn't going to come back. It's not like we can magically say, oh yes, we've now got £6 billion in our pocket now, let's move on. But here's the thing as well, some people say, oh yeah, who was it? Cornwall and Wales say they want the UK government to match the funding that EU gave them beforehand. That would be their ideal, that the UK government match the amount of money they were getting from the EU before. If that's your ideal, why did you want to leave? I don't get it. You've literally bitten the hand that feeds, and you're asking a new hand to give you back what you had before. I can't even give an explanation to it. It's just beyond stupidity to me. I don't get it. If someone can please explain to me the thinking behind this, please do, because I'm lost. I'm lost on that one. Okay, so that's the economy, right? Now, let's focus on another one. The NHS, another easy one. That extra 350 million that was promised to go straight from the EU coffers into NHS. Nope, that's not going to happen. That number was a complete fabrication. I'm actually surprised that, what's his name? Fabergé? Oh, Nigel, whatever his fucking face is. I was actually surprised that he balls out said straight away, nope, that money's not going to the NHS. I think he said it within 24 hours. Is that a record in backpedaling? It freaking well should be. So that's not going to happen. So that's one promise by the Leave campaign gone already. One of the biggest ones, in fact. What's the other one that people wanted to vote for, but the reason why they leave it? Oh yeah, sovereignty, yeah, control, yeah, control. So many people on the interview say, oh yeah, we take back control. We already had control. We already had control. We already had a sweet deal with the EU where we could reap the benefits of the European Union while retaining things like the pound sterling, yeah? Oh, you say, oh, complete control. Yeah, no more Brussels meddling. All right, okay, so we take back complete control. What do we do with that? Can someone give me one example of what we do with this extra control? What would you do differently? And quite frankly, it's not going to be you anyway. We're saying, oh yeah, bring it back to the British people. You're giving it to these MPs again. Here's the irony. We've just had our Prime Minister resign. Guess what's going to happen? There's going to be an unelected Prime Minister within the Conservatives Party. That's what you wanted. To take back control? It's beyond hypocrisy. Okay, immigration then. Yeah, this is the big one that people talked about. Immigration. Yeah, now we can control our borders. Now we can control immigration the way we want to. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into the details of the pros and cons of immigration, but let's just talk about the fact that this is also being backpedaled on, because the problem is, because we want to have our cake and eat it, we want to have access to the single market. Basically, we want to leave the EU, but not leave it. And of course, understandably, the European Union, the Commission has basically said, just fuck off. Out is out. And I can kind of see their point. You know, we can't have control over the market when it comes to goods and also control over the people. You can't have both. If we want to have unfettered access to the market of physical goods, we can't just say, oh, we have to control the people as well. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And the thing is now, we've actually shot ourselves in the foot, because by doing that, we've basically said that we don't have unfettered access to the other countries anymore, because with our passports, we could access all the other 27 European countries for leisure and for business. And that's gone. That's going to be gone. And here's the one that hurts as well. I think the fact that we've basically destroyed the United Kingdom. The UK as we know it has got 2 years tops. That's what we have. I reckon we've got no more than 2 years. 2018, the Union Jack is going to be a piece of history. Why? Because Scotland voted unanimously to stay in the EU. Northern Ireland had a majority vote to stay in the EU. England and Wales are dragging out Northern Ireland and Scotland out of the EU against their collective will. And because of that, understandably, Scotland want another referendum. And in the first referendum, I was vehemently against Scotland going independent. It horrified me. I mean, there was plenty of economical reasons why I didn't want them to leave, but a lot of it was basically, I don't want Scotland to leave the UK. Now I'm on their side. I'm totally on their side for leaving the UK. Even though it hurts me, it kills me, because the flag will be gone. The country that we know it, like just a picture of the UK, the United Kingdom, that single recognizable physical picture of our country will basically look like it's been beheaded, because Scotland as a political entity will be separate from us. And Northern Ireland may go the same way. I actually feel especially sorry for Northern Ireland, because at least Scotland is looking towards, well, they'll just have one border. Whereas with Northern Ireland, they've got that border with Ireland. And now Ireland is a European country. So their what will happen now is they will have an EU, non-EU border. There will be border control between Ireland and Northern Ireland. This has been a massive problem in the past. Maybe a lot of people, maybe younger people, may be too young to remember this, but well, go and research it. Research the Troubles, basically. Just type in the Troubles, Ireland, and you'll get your research. But this is going to kick up a massive fuss. This was settled. The issues in Northern Ireland were all but settled, and it's going to kick up dust all over again. And they may go towards a united Ireland. And again, I can't blame them for that, because at least that will actually solve the border problem. But again, there's a lot of people in Northern Ireland who don't want to be part of Ireland. They want to be part of the UK, which is going to cause conflict, and it may cause violent conflict. Again, research the Troubles. So, this is the irony as well. I mean, people were waving their Union Jack. They were waving the Union Jack on the day that we apparently, according to Nick Fabergé, we declared our independence. Ooh, Independence Day. Wave your Union Jack. The Union Jack. A symbol of unity and togetherness and working together rather than against each other. The irony is killing me, especially when 2 out of the 4 countries representing that flag didn't want to leave. So why? Why have people done this? I don't even think people have thought this through or even care. And quite frankly, the more reasons people give for wanting to stay in the EU, the more stubborn leavers become, because they don't care. I mean, as we all know by now, people didn't want to hear from the quote-unquote so-called experts. Why? Why? It's anti-intellectualism. That's all it is. It's anti-intellectualism, because apparently we're sick of hearing from experts, no matter how educated or how informed they are in the matter. That is the definition of anti-intellectualism. To me, the people who voted leave, I mean, I'm not saying that everyone voted this way. There are some people who voted leave who I'm sure have very legitimate and mature reasons, but there was a toxic combo of leave voters between a protest vote, a xenophobic vote, and a Little England one. There are people who are just simply wanting to shout "Rule Britannia," oh the irony, while they basically vote the UK out of the EU because they still think that the UK is the greatest country in the world and they still have this empire mentality. I'm not even going to fucking get into that. And then a protest vote as well. There are a number of people now who are regretting voting leave because they didn't think they'd actually get it. They didn't think that we'd be leaving the EU. It was a protest vote. You fucking idiots. If you want to protest, spoil your ballot. Go and actually protest. The second you get a heavy decision like this in front of you, don't fuck it up. Go and do an actual protest. Make a fucking placard and go to Westminster. Don't do this fucking shit. Oh, people say, oh, don't be a sore loser. People are saying things like, oh, it's over and done now. Stop talking about it. Stop being so melodramatic. This isn't a fucking football match. This isn't voting for your favourite X Factor singer, for fuck's sake. This is a serious issue that is going to play out for fucking years, decades, and it's going to affect our children as well. It's going to affect the younger generations. And you don't want to fucking talk about it because the vote's done. I'm sorry, but this isn't a fucking phone-in survey. This isn't X Factor. This is a serious political issue which is going to affect everyone negatively for the next few years. And by the time we get out the opposite end and by fucking some miracle we end up being back in the black, back in some positive light, it may be too late. We will be no longer Great Britain, we will be Little England, and Northern Ireland and Scotland will be gone back in the EU, and England, Wales are alone. Oh, people say, oh, that's democracy. That's democracy. People have voted it, whether you like it or not, you've got to go with it. No, it isn't. That's not democracy. That's populism. That's what a referendum is. We are a representative democracy. We have people who we hire and who we pay who make these decisions for us because they're informed on these matters. Can you honestly say, hand on heart, that the number of people who voted in this referendum, who made that margin between the Remain and the Leavers, were informed enough for us to make this massive decision? Massive decision. And the thing is, this is it. We're out. We're not coming back to the EU. And if by any chance we make it back in decades, it's not going to be the same. We have a very, very sweet deal with the EU right now. And if by some miracle they take us back, and remember, if we need to get back in the EU, there's going to have to be a unanimous vote among all the current EU countries to accept us back in. Don't be surprised if Scotland, who will be an EU country at that point, basically say, ha ha ha, fuck you, and veto that. I wouldn't be surprised. But if we do by some miracle get back in the EU, we'll have to be all in. We will have to be all in, accept the EU for all its faults and warts, and the euro itself. No more special treatment for the UK. No more special treatment. And this leads me on to my final point. Why I feel this hurt me personally. Why I feel like this was a personal affront. I live in Japan. And although I love living in Japan, and it's a great country living here, I still get homesick. And I get homesick especially when I feel a twinge of pride for my home country. And I have a t-shirt with a Union Jack on it. I've got several t-shirts with Union Jacks on it, in fact. And I feel proud of my home country. I did feel proud of my home country because I felt like we were a nation of tolerant people, people with a great sense of humour, outward-looking people, people who were willing to be on the world stage, leading the way, working together as opposed to against each other. That's not the case anymore. We've almost within a single swoop, it seems like we've turned into a nation of people who just care about ourselves and just basically want to focus inward on the little Englander, who no longer want to take a part in the world. The simple fact is the world is getting a smaller place, and for some reason the UK doesn't want to be a part of that. And here's the thing. Here's the real crux of it for me. Apparently, immigration was the big hot button for a lot of people. Immigration was a big sticking point for a lot of people as to why they voted out the EU. Now, aside from the fact that a lot of people are angry about non-EU immigration, and for some reason they thought that voting themselves out of the EU would help with that, despite the fact that we always and always will have control over non-EU immigration, and that's not going to change because of this. It's a simple fact that the UK has basically stood up and said, no, we're closing the door. We're pulling up the drawbridge. We are extracting ourselves from the world stage. Britain for the British. Now, my wife is Japanese. My wife, if we were to move back to the UK, and we've always had plans for that to happen, my wife would be an immigrant. Now, we have an advantage. For starters, she's my wife. She could come over she will come over on a spouse visa, which is the Trump visa, basically. Not the fucking guy, no. As in, it's the ultimate visa which gives you access all areas because she's my spouse. But it's the principle of it. It's this whole idea that I would be taking her to a country where the majority of people want people like my wife to be in second place, where the preferential treatment goes towards the British. Now, I understand where that sentiment may come from, but how on earth can I justify to my wife and to my future family that we are going to be living in a country where the majority of people, the 52%, want that to not be the case? It hurts. It hurts. It really hurts. I don't know what to say. Even if by some miracle the UK comes through this, not just in one piece, but actually better, if by some miracle the United Kingdom holds and Scotland and Northern Ireland remain with the UK and they ride out this storm and they come out the other end as a stronger economy, I don't think I would want to come back anyway. I've seen the ugly side of the UK this week. It's always been there, but I was convinced it was a minority. I never thought such ignorance, stupidity, and hate, pure hate, would spill over into anything as catastrophic as this, anything as official as this. As far as I'm done, I'm done. I'm done. It's just, I'm shocked. This is not just a vote on the European Union. This is not just a vote on remaining or leaving the European Union. It's a vote on what the UK thinks, what the UK's attitude is to the world at large. And it said no. Maybe I should say no as well.